Another thing that I found is really important to know if you're trying to travel cheaply in a vehicle is to know how to check, maintain and repair things by yourself. Because mechanics are expensive and they might sometimes take a really long time. We actually live in the vehicle. So if the vehicle was in a shop for a period of time, that would mean that we don't have anywhere to live. We might have to get a hotel or something like that. And that will just all add to the cost. So while we've been driving this vehicle, a couple of things that I've learned that I actually have learned previously, some of them I've learned previously, but I've been applying, is to check your vehicle regularly. So checking the fluid levels, so the coolant fluid levels, the oil levels, whatever fluid levels you have in your vehicle. So we've got power steering fluid, and then obviously you've got washer fluid. You can easily keep an eye on things like your tires, your light bulbs, all of those small things. Even if you check the belts and things like that, the functioning inside of your engine, inside of your vehicle, that will save you a lot of hassle later on. So if you keep the oil topped up, if you keep all those things topped up, you will have less likelihood of problems arising from those things. So problems will still arise, of course, because that's how life works, but you might have slightly less likelihood of that. I also have taught myself now a little bit about how to service this vehicle, and I'll tell you a bit about that today. So whenever I go into doing repairs on anything really, I like to remind myself of my sort of mental intentions for doing these things, which might sound like a bit of a strange thing to think about when you are doing vehicle maintenance. But as somebody who is trying to follow a Theravadan Buddhist philosophy, I need to check in with these things really quite regularly. So awareness of your thoughts and emotions is a really central part of a Theravadan Buddhist philosophy. So being aware and being not attached to those emotions and those feelings. When you're doing repairs, it's a great time to practice the awareness and non-attachment. If you become angry or frustrated, for example, while performing a repair, and then you become attached to that feeling rather than allowing that feeling to go, you're most likely going to have a bad time. You might get angry, you might throw something, you might, accidentally break something out of frustration. So to me, that's number one thing that I need when I'm going into making some repairs or doing some maintenance, is I check in with my mind. I say, right, I'm going to be extra aware when I'm going into this. I'm really going to practice my awareness. I'm going to practice allowing the frustrations or allowing the difficulties to arise as they will. And then instead of grasping onto those and starting to think about, oh, this is too difficult, this is too hard, I'm making a mess of it, you allow those emotions and those feelings to pass away again. And that's the great thing about Buddhism. It really is applicable in every single circumstance. And this is the circumstance that I apply it to very consciously, because I know there's going to be frustrations. And maybe I know at the end there's also going to be a sense of satisfaction, but you don't want to cling on to that sense of satisfaction necessarily, because that could cause you suffering again in the future. That's my number one thing, as I have my awareness when I go into it. All right. The next things that I needed to be able to do the repairs and the maintenance and servicing on this vehicle is the manual. So I downloaded the manual for the 2000 Chevy Express, which is the vehicle that's behind me. And in that manual, it actually lists when you should do what kind of servicing. And the servicing that we needed to do at 45,000 miles, which is when we bought this vehicle, was to change the oil and to grease the chassis components. So changing oil, I had done this once before on a motorcycle. It is, the concept is fairly similar. It's actually not that difficult. There's a plug at the bottom of your oil pan, it's a bolt that you unbolt, and then you drain all the oil out. And after you've drained it out, you put the plug back in and fill up with brand new oil. So that's the basic gist of changing your oil. The car also has an oil filter, So next to the pan is the oil filter. So I needed to replace that as well. And that was what I found on that manual. So I went and did a little bit of research, did a bit of Googling, did a bit of YouTube, found out how to go about actually changing the oil, how to go about changing the fuel filter. And it is a fairly similar concept, but of course there's lots of difficulties involved in it. So the tools from Walmart, when we first got here, I bought this little toolkit, which was actually a motorcycle repair kit. And I think it was only $12. But it has a lot of the tools that I need in it. So it's got the little bolts here and this little tool for me to help to remove the bolt at the bottom of the oil pan. So I already had this. I also I use this for a fair few things. This is like a rust removal sort of spray. And it's also for things that are a little bit stuck. So moving parts that are a little bit stuck. So I've used this on screws in the past. And I had to use this on that bolt at the bottom of the oil pan. I had to use a lot of this and I had to wait a long time because that bolt was really, really stuck. So that was super, super challenging. Then I got this little oil pan. As you can see, it's got some of my other tools in it. $2 from Walmart. So very simple. This oil pan this little bucket goes underneath the oil pan. When you've unscrewed the bolt, you can drain all of your oil into here. When the oil is drained and you've put the screw plug back in and you filled up the oil with your new oil, I took the old oil from this pan, poured it into the empty oil container because I just filled up. And then I took this old oil to an auto shop. So I think most auto shops can dispose of oil. Don't just throw it in the bin. Then the next thing that was a little bit more tricky was to remove the fuel filter. So the fuel filter, you do need a tool to remove that. You just need a tool to kind of get it started. It just turns off. So at Walmart, they have a brand called Hyper Tough. This is one of the Hyper Tough wrenches. But unfortunately, I bought this one. I went to try it out, and it was not really right for my car. It wouldn't fit around the filter because it was a little bit too large. These sections were too large. I couldn't get it to move. So I practiced my awareness. I felt a sense of frustration that I had bought this tool. It was only $5, but I had bought this tool that doesn't work. So I felt the frustration. I allowed the frustration to come and go. And then I went and bought the actual proper tool, which I think a lot of the YouTube videos I watched had this tool. So it's just a slightly different type of oil filter wrench. This one was $10. So again, not that expensive. It's the same brand, Hyper Tough, and it just slides over the oil filter. So it doesn't need a lot of space around the filter. The filter that I changed out of this car, it was really old. It was 3 years old. They should be changed every year. So that was a little bit annoying, but now there's a brand new one in there. On the Walmart website, you can put in your car details and they will tell you what sort of oil filter you need to buy for your vehicle. So when I did that, they told me that I needed a filter called a Fram 5, and it cost me $5 as well. So all up, actually buying all of those things was pretty cheap. The oil on the oil cap in my car, in this car, it actually says on the top of the cap what type of oil to buy. So that was really, really simple. I could just see the type of oil that goes in there. These ones were $15 each, so I had to buy two. One of these is 5 quarts, which is a measurement that the Americans use. I'm not sure what that is in a metric measurement, but this car takes 6 quarts of oil. So what I did is I just bought 2 because I know that as we're driving, we'll most likely have to top up the oil a few more times. It's not leaking oil or anything. It's just that I guess the oil gets used. So for the whole oil change, I think I might have spent maybe $40, and then obviously I have this tool which I didn't actually need, so I did spend a bit extra. I just used a cut up soda bottle, gave it a bit of a clean, and this was my funnel instead of buying an actual funnel. So I was quite happy with that. It was a tricky thing to do, especially to get the bolts out to drain the oil and to get the oil filter loosened to get it off. But after I've done it once, now I know how to do it. I've got all the tools for it, so that next time I do it, all I need is 2 bottles of oil. So I'm really happy with that. The other thing I said I needed, so there were 2 things that I needed to do at 45,000 miles for this vehicle. I had to lubricate or grease the chassis components. I initially had absolutely no idea what that meant. Lubricating or greasing the chassis components basically is there are these small little balloon looking things between your front 2 tires. So in between the moving parts of your tires. And those little balloon things are full of grease. And right next to those balloon things is a small nipple or something called a zerk. So I only just learned about a zerk. I thought it was quite an amusing little name. But basically the zerk, you can attach a grease gun, like this one, into this zerk, and you can pump grease into those little balloon things. And I guess that just keeps everything well lubricated. So that was the second thing that I had to do for my maintenance. I bought this grease gun. Again, it's a hyper tough one from Walmart. It cost me $20, so it's just a little bit more expensive. And the grease comes in these cardboard tubes, and that was only $4. So I did a bit of Googling, I did a bit of looking around on YouTube. This particular vehicle has 11 zerks between the 2 front wheels. So the reason why I wanted to know that it's got 11 is because I had to go and find them, and I can sort of count. When I know I got to 11, I know I can stop looking. I grabbed a small brush. I just brushed off the zerks when I found them because most of the time they're covered in grease and a bit of dirt. Brush them off. You connect the end of your grease gun onto the zerk. I saw a very good YouTube video where the guy said just give it 2 pumps, so 2 pumps of grease into it. If you pump too much, it sort of leaks out and you kind of make the whole thing a bit dirty. So 2 pumps of grease into it and done. I wouldn't say it was an easy thing to do. Now that I've done it once, at least I know where all the zerks are. I know how to attach the grease gun and detach the grease gun. I know how many pumps to put into it. But I wouldn't send anybody into doing this thinking that it was easy, because you had to really fight. You had to find the zerks, you had to clean them off, you had to connect and disconnect the end of the grease gun, which actually is not that easy. And then of course you had to pump it, and some of the zerks, they can be a little bit locked up, so you might have to pump a little bit hard initially just to get it open again, to get the grease into there. But that whole greasing the chassis components, that cost me $24 to do that myself. So that was awesome. I am going to continue to do some of the other checks and maintenance that is suggested or recommended in the manual. So I think at 52,000 miles, there is a bit more maintenance to do. And there are a couple of things that you can check based on the manual. So you can check that your gears are in proper working order, because it's the data is in proper working order and things like that. So I will go and check those, and I might make a video about it if I find something interesting. But yeah, otherwise, that's pretty much it for this video. If you've got questions about any of the things that I have talked about, please do let me know. I'm super passionate about, I guess, this form of travel. So traveling cheaply, actually, not spending a lot of money on things that are not really necessary for you. All the money that I've saved from going to the mechanic, I can now use that to continue traveling. I'm not necessarily recommending this course of action to anybody. I'm just sharing my experiences of what I've done and how it saved me money. So if you think that that's cool, do it. If you are really uncertain, maybe don't do it. But it's always nice to have lots of different voices out there on the internet sort of giving you an idea of what can and can't be done. If you think this content is interesting and you would like to follow along as I share similar content about affordable traveling or about my experiences with traveling through America, please subscribe to this channel. I will upload videos as often as I can.